the Supreme Court said the public has an interest in effective law enforcement. So there's, according to the Supreme Court, there's a need to balance the public interest in suppressing crime and the public's interest in the free flow of information. The court concluded that a case-by-case approach must be adopted, and that in order for a journalist's source privilege to be recognized, the claimant, the person who's claiming the privilege, must satisfy the so-called, the four so-called Wigmore conditions. First, the relationship between the journalist and the source must originate in an undertaking that the source's identity not be disclosed. Two, the confidentiality of the source is essential for the communication of the information. In other words, the source cannot give the information if his identity is not protected. Three, the relationship between the journalist and the source is in the public interest. And four, the public interest served by protecting the identity of the source outweighs the public interest in getting at the truth. Now, the Supreme Court has adopted a similar approach with respect to search warrants directed at the media. Because the essential role the media plays in a democratic society, the media needs additional protection when it comes to search warrants. To get a search warrant against an ordinary citizen, all the police have to demonstrate to the justice of the peace is that there are reasonable and probable grounds that the execution of the search warrant will yield information or evidence pertaining to the commission of a crime. The Supreme Court said that that basic test is not sufficient to protect the media. It said that the justice of the peace must also take into consideration 8 other factors, the so-called Wigmore, the so-called LaSalle factors, before authorizing a search warrant against the media. The main LaSalle factors are the following. The justice of the peace must ensure that a balance is struck between the competing interests of the state in investigating and prosecuting crime and the right to confidentiality of the media in the course of getting at public, in gathering and disseminating news. To do that, the justice of the peace necessarily has to take into consideration the vital role the media plays in a democratic society. The affidavit in support of the search warrant must disclose sufficient detail to enable the judge to exercise his discretion judicially. And third, the justice of the peace, and this is probably the most important, the justice of the peace must be satisfied that there is no alternative source for which the information can be obtained, and if there are alternative sources, those resources have to be exhausted before the justice of the peace can authorize a search warrant. Are these criteria sufficient, or do we need some sort of shield law in Quebec? That's perhaps something we can discuss tonight. And in the Patrick Lagacé case, certainly the issue before the court will be whether or not the LaSalle factors have been respected, but even in a more fundamental question in the Patrick Lagacé case will be whether the basic test for obtaining search warrants was respected. In other words, was the objective of the police really to uncover evidence about the commission of a crime, or was it to discover who was leaking sources, who was leaking information to the police? If it was a latter objective, I submit that I don't think the warrant will survive the scrutiny of the courts. It is an improper purpose, and I think the Superior Court will quash the decision that that was the sole reason for obtaining the search warrant. Thank you.
I'll sit here if you don't mind to give the event more of a panel flavor. Merci de l'invitation, merci Andrew en particulier. C'est un plaisir pour moi de me retrouver ici pour parler d'un sujet assez brûlant d'actualité. On m'a donné donc 7 minutes, vous le savez. Making 7 points in 7 minutes is a bit of a challenge, so I'll just make 3. 2 points about law and 1 point about governance, and we'll leave the rest of the discussion. Before making those points, however, I'd like briefly to clarify a few things about what we've read in the papers over the past few days. and to qualify what's been written and